Hello, sweet parents. Welcome to the When Our Adult Children Walk Away podcast. My name is Dr. Janet Steinkamp, and during each episode of When Our Adult Children Walk Away, I will provide my professional and personal insights, information and opportunities for your self-reflection and growth, tips and tricks to make every day count, and encouragement to keep moving forward. I'm here to help you dig deep and get down to the root causes so that you can find your way out of the darkness to a positive and lasting relationship. Grab your notebook and a pen, settle into your favorite chair, and let's get to it. In this episode, we're taking our second layer of the coercive control onion and peeling it back, that next layer of the onion. And so we're going to start by reminding ourselves that coercive control is a form of abuse. It's damaging because of the climate of fear it creates, the isolation, the confusion, the dependency, and people become trapped and they don't recognize that the trap is being built, that they're becoming boxed in. So no physical marks, bruises, although oftentimes coercive control can lead to or involve physical abuse, but coercive control is absolutely psychological abuse. And some of the good news is that the United Kingdom, some of the states in the United States are beginning to recognize and actually name coercive abuse as a form of, a legally defined form of abuse. And for those of us working in estrangement, we have become painfully aware of how frequently coercive control leads to estrangement. We're going to talk a little bit about how that works in this episode. We're going to look at the 7 aspects of coercive control that I listed and mentioned in the introductory episode, the first layer of the onion, so to speak. And so the first aspect or the first characteristic of coercive control is isolation. So maybe your child used to call regularly, maybe every week, maybe every couple days, and they don't anymore. Maybe they cancel plans repeatedly, or maybe they cancel plans repeatedly. They may schedule plans, make plans, and sound really excited about it, and then at the last minute they cancel. And this can lead to a pattern of that, where friends and family begin to say, well, they schedule, but they never show up. She schedules, but it always gets canceled because her partner has some reason. Or the adult child may not name the reason they can't come, but will make something up. You know, we have a flat tire, the baby's sick, we don't have a pet sitter, whatever their excuse is. It is the pattern that we watch for. Another thing that you might hear or begin to suspect is that your adult child is being told that being around you, being around their parents, their family, their friends, brings them down, brings negativity into the house. Every time you go see your mom and dad, you come home and you're so shook up. They begin to erode the adult child's confidence in being with their parents or their friends, and they start putting a wedge in between. That's how they begin to isolate. The second aspect, monitoring and surveillance, looks like constant texting, tracking. Sometimes they put those little tracking, I can't think what they're called, the Apple trackers in somebody's purse or something. They may claim that they're doing that to make sure that the person always has a backup, that it's a security thing, safety. In case they lose their phone, they'll be able to track it. If the car breaks down, they'll be able to find the person who they're trying to cut off. So the monitoring and surveillance, where it may start and look like security, safety, caring, support, it begins to feel like and drift into control and monitoring. The third is degradation and humiliation. This is really difficult to watch as a parent. I know with my daughter's partner, he used to try to draw me into the humiliation and degradation. So as an example, my daughter drives through the wet paint when the street painters are out putting the lines, freshening up all the lines on the street. Drives through some fresh paint inadvertently, and the paint splashes up on the side of the car. So when she gets home, she doesn't know what happens. When she gets home, there's kind of a splash of paint down the side of the vehicle. He, this coercive partner, begins to belittle her. How could you have let that happen? Why did you drive in the paint? Weren't there cones? Why didn't you go around? And then starts to pull me in, laughing. Doesn't she always does things like this, doesn't she? Hell, she's the worst driver. She can't even, XYZ, fill in the blank. And if we're not careful, we can get drawn into that as a sense of humor. Our adult child may be laughing. They may be joining in. Yeah, you're right. I'm so dumb about that stuff. I don't even know. I'm so distracted all the time. I didn't even notice. I should have noticed. It's my fault. I'll take it in, get it taken care of. And so because the coercive partner sets it up, engages our adult child, and then tries to pull us into the triangle of humiliation, we can find ourselves in retrospect thinking, my gosh, I just participated in that. How did that happen? And it's difficult because in those moments, it's not a good idea to say, yeah, I'm not going to jump into this. This doesn't feel good to me, because it embarrasses the coercive person, and your adult child is likely to pay the price later. The coercive partner can point to that later and say, see, your mom is constantly putting me on the spot, putting me down, telling me I'm wrong. You need to defend me. I can't stand when they're here because this always happens, and we always end up fighting. And little by little, the adult child's confidence in being with us is eroded. And over time, this cycle of degradation and humiliation begins to wear down their self-esteem, and it creates self-doubt. They begin questioning their ability to effectively read the relationship between them and the parent. Number 4, control over everyday life. I have a girlfriend who, when she first got married, her husband purchased a new outfit for her. Of course, she was flattered. I mean, my husband has bought clothing for me and surprised me with it. I don't think that's all that unusual. But in her case, it was hung in the, I don't know if it was the closet or the changing room or whatever. And she was told when to wear it. This is an outfit for you to wear when we go to our family's house for Thanksgiving. So it was not a gift of honoring her interest or really even need for new clothes. It was his way of controlling how she was going to look in front of his family. It gets dressed up in attempts to compliment, and that also can be true for how they eat, what they eat, when they eat, how they spend money, if they can spend money, where they spend money. I was talking to a client the other day, and I don't know if there's any coercion in that household at all. I hear these red flags. This is what I heard. My husband was so surprised that I brought home whatever it was. And I said, I don't know why you're surprised, because you put aside money for me to do this. And the response was, yes, but I didn't think you'd do it. Now, that could be just completely innocent, completely an honest and transparent interaction. If that begins happening regularly and the person is told to return it, made to feel ridiculous and irresponsible, and they choose to return it, then it is something to pay attention to. Again, these are difficult things to watch with our adult children. My daughter the other day had a friend over, and I don't know, she was doing something in the kitchen, and he said, it's time to come over and sit down and eat. Come on, get over here. Everybody else is eating. I don't know, it just bristles me, because to me, that's a red flag. Maybe, again, totally innocent, concerned about her eating food while it's hot. Could be absolutely out of good intent and caring. When that becomes a pattern, and if there begin to be punishments, that needs to be noticed. So the penalty or the punishment might be, well, we all sat down and and ate, you didn't get here in time, so I guess you don't get to eat this meal. That's the punishment. Or if you're not here in the next few minutes, I'm going to pour milk on it. And they do. In my another child's experience, she had a partner who would go into the kitchen and spray bug spray on the food before she could serve the children because dinner wasn't done on time, she had taken too long, it wasn't the right kind of food, and so she would have to start from scratch. Those are abusive, punishing outcomes in a coercive relationship. With control over everyday life, the coercive partner may use terms like, it's just my preference. It makes me really happy when you do this way. And then when your adult child doesn't, then the response is, well, I really asked you to do that other thing, and this makes me really unhappy. It's a kind of a win-lose situation, and it begins to drive the person who's being coerced into specific behaviors. The coercive person may say things like, or present their opinions like, they know best. Well, I've really been doing this a long time, and I really do know best. This isn't your best thing. You don't really pay attention to these things, whatever they are, X, Y, Z. And so trust me, this is best. Just trust me and do what I'm suggesting. That begins to, again, erode self-confidence and the sense of being able to make decisions and determine their own behavior. Let's look at 5, gaslighting. Gaslighting, once you grasp the concept, it's not difficult. Gaslighting is when a person imposes their story on the other person. So it may be, I told you I didn't like it when you do that. I really like it when you do it this way, and you still insist on doing it the wrong way. And the adult child, or the person who's being coerced, is left thinking, well, here are the reasons that I didn't do it that way. But their reasons don't count. Those reasons are discounted, and the other person's reasons become the prevailing thought. That's gaslighting. It may be, I had such a nice time at Mom and Dad's house for dinner tonight. The person who's coercive is likely to come back with, really? Man, I didn't think it was that great. Did you see what so-and-so did? Did you hear what they said? The turkey was so dry it was hardly edible. They will come up with a litany of reasons why the person's story is not accurate. That's different than sharing an alternative perspective, and they look very similar. Sharing an alternative perspective recognizes the first person's story. Yeah, I can see, looked like you were having a really good time. I love it when you're at home. You're so happy, and I know you really feel good about it. And maybe they don't say anything about their experience until they're asked. And then when asked, they might say something like, well, yeah, it wasn't my favorite meal, but I know your mom worked really hard, or your dad worked really hard to make the meal, and I really appreciate what they do. You can have a negative experience or a different experience from the other person, but the difference is you don't impose it on the other person and try to replace their story. Over time, what happens is the person who's being coerced waits to be told what the story is. They wait to hear how the experience was for the partner, and then they take that on as their own. So eventually, there isn't even a challenge to the coercive partner. They don't even have to dispel the other person's experience. They just tell them what it is. Well, we had a good time tonight, didn't we? Or, wow, that was not good for us. Or, I don't know why we keep going there. We come home and it's just, we don't feel good about it. They begin to blur the individuality and replace the other person's experience with their own. So aspect number 6 of coercive control moves into threats and intimidation. This is where the rubber really begins to hit the road. It doesn't even have to be a threat about physical harm, but fear is present. They create a sense of fear. I just can't be here if you're going to keep going to see those people. You're going to have to choose them or me. I don't feel like the baby is safe with them, so unless you're willing to put the baby at risk, we can't use them for childcare anymore. Or the partner may threaten to hurt themselves. I just can't stand this anymore. I'm just going to kill myself. And I've heard it. I've heard it in my daughter's life. I've seen it happen. And the person who has become dependent on the coercive partner can't live without them any longer. They can't make up their own mind. They don't know what the story is that they're supposed to be telling. They're totally dependent on this coercive person. So to unbraid themselves from them or to disconnect is, in the beginning, nearly impossible. It takes a very long time for someone who's been in a coercive relationship to let go of that and be able to stand outside the relationship. I would suggest years. If you have an adult child who's been in a relationship that's based on coercive control for a number of years, if and when they're able to disconnect from that person and step away, it could take 2, 3, 4 years for them to really become an individual again, to be able to uncurl. I pictured in my head, I'm very visual, I picture it like somebody has a grip around them and they have to peel their fingers away one at a time. It can take a very long time to get those fingers off and get out of their grip. And remember, in that period of time, the coercive person is typically doing everything they can to maintain control. So it isn't as if the control stops, unless, of course, the person dies for some reason. They're committed to this coercive relationship. They've got it good. In many cases, they don't even have to work. The other person is paying the bills. They are running the house. They're doing all the laundry. The person who's coercive gets off scot-free and then takes credit publicly. We cleaned the house this weekend. Yeah, we've been making some really good dishes lately. We. They intertwine those two identities. Now, I'm speaking in very specific examples. You will find when you go to study these aspects and coercive control, it's really very complex and very deep. And so we're just scratching the surface here. So make sure you understand I'm not speaking in finality or sharing everything with you. I'm just scratching the surface. So number 7, rules and punishments. There are very often unwritten rules. As an example, I've seen a couple sit at a dinner table with a large group of people. It might even be a holiday meal or maybe a birthday meal or Sunday family dinner, and the two people are texting across the table. Now, that happens all the time. That alone means nothing, really, not in this day and age. If it is a rule that the person has to respond immediately, or there's a consequence afterwards, that is rules and punishment. Rules in coercive control often include who can the person speak to, where can they go, when they drive, which grocery store do they go to, which gas station do they go to. It might be when they take the dog for a walk, what's the pattern, what's the path, and how long can they be gone before there's some kind of punishment. So if the rules are ignored or the person who's being coerced steps away from those rules, then there are consequences, punishments. In coercion, that looks like the silent treatment or coldness, verbal attacks. It might be emotional withdrawal. The silent treatment, I can't talk to you. You frightened me so badly, I just can't even look at you. And so the person who broke the rule cannot engage with the person whom they've become incredibly dependent on. There are a few more examples in here that I'd like to share with you. So if we go back to number 5, gaslighting, here are a couple more examples. So in gaslighting, the person who is controlling may use terms like, you're too sensitive, why do you let that get under your skin? I'm not saying anything that's not true. I'm not saying anything to hurt you. I'm saying these things to help you. So it's because the person is upset then, the inference is, they're upset because they're weak, because they are too sensitive, not because the person who's making the statement has any responsibility. It's consistently the person who's being taken advantage of and abused's responsibility to fix the problem. Another term of gaslighting is you're imagining things that just didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't see it. And that may have to do with maybe they'd had a bad day and they weren't as relational as they sometimes are. And the coercive person takes that and uses it. They weaponize that. Man, he sure was, or she sure was short tonight. I don't know why they had us over. Why did they even want us there if they were going to treat us like that? They drive that wedge in. They take advantage of that. So now that we've reviewed those 7 things, I'm thinking that many of you listening will be able to identify some of those examples in your adult child's life with their partner, with their husband, wife, significant other, whoever is the person of concern for you. My recommendation is that you go very slow here. It would be really unfortunate if there was not coercion and we began seeing coercion where it just didn't exist. That puts us in a spot where we become the person on the out. We become the person that's the problem. In cases where you think, absolutely, there is coercive control here, my adult child is in a tough spot, and I don't know how to help them. I don't know how to get them out. The truth of the matter is, our adult children are exactly that, adults, and they are in control of their relationships. They are responsible for their life, and they have to be responsible for getting out. Do you remember in the 70s, if you're as old as I am, in the 60s and 70s, there were times, it was kind of a thing, that the white van pulled up on the sidewalk and 2 guys would, usually great big guys, would jump out of the van, grab somebody and haul them away in the van. Parents would hire people to do that because they were joining a cult or, standing on the street corner with a bucket collecting money in a long white robe. I mean, that was decades ago how we would have handled some of these things. Obviously, that's illegal. It would cause irreparable damage to the relationship. It could cause harm. You could get sued. That option simply does not exist any longer. So what are the options? How can we manage that? I'm thinking about doing a full episode on this topic, but I want to give you just a few quick hints here, because the temptation is, after we start hearing this and really digging into coercion, considering our adult child's life, our inclination is to get off the episode and go do something, say something, take action. Many of us are action takers, and we want to move fast because now that we've got evidence that what we thought was going on really likely is going on, we want to act. We want to save them. These are our children. So my number 1 tip is, do not confront the partner or accuse your adult child. Do not complain to your adult child about the person you are concerned about being coercive. This can deepen and intensify the isolation. It gives the person who is eroding your adult child's confidence and self-esteem fodder. It gives them ammunition to use against you. So please don't. Write down your feelings and your thoughts on paper or on a document that is not an email or text. Write it down and get it out of your head if that helps you. Talk out loud if it's more helpful to get it out into the air and you're not really a writer. You can, of course, talk to a professional if you're working with a coach. I don't know that therapists would know quite what to do with this because it's not mental health. Certainly the cycle of abuse includes mental health, aspects of mental health. The approach we take is not necessarily therapeutic. So I would advise you to keep your communication gentle, open, consistent, even brief. The light's always on. You're always welcome here. We love having you here. And you are an important member of our family. You always will be. You can send those messages quietly, privately. If somebody is using surveillance in their coercion, they're probably checking email and text messages and listening to voicemail. So I'd be very cautious of using those three. As a general rule, I would assume that what you're writing and saying is being shared with the coercive person. Either they're accessing it through whatever mode it is, if it's written or voicemail, or they require the person who comes home from being with us to relay everything they were told. To earn favor, they are likely to share our private messages. So we have to be careful and just sprinkle it in gently here and there. When my kids were little and I made pancakes for them, I would slip in a little zucchini. Same thing. We just want to kind of slip it in here and there where we can. The goal is not to solve things or change things. Our adult child has to do that. The goal is to let them know they have a safe haven, that when they're ready, if they become so inclined, and these things often take time, they know where to come. They can get to us with as few barriers between them and us. I used to say things like, if you ever wanted to come home, you just have to tell me, because I would just get the ticket for you. That's all I'd say. And I'd sprinkle it in when there was a conversation about, is that still going on at home? Or, a question about home. I would use those opportunities to sprinkle in the messages. You want to avoid blame or pressure. Your child may be holding on by a thread. Whatever you are seeing is likely amplified in their private life, whether they're living in the same home with this person or just roommates or a group together of some kind, or even if they work together, they could be a business partner. There are all kinds of relational dynamics and configurations that can include coercion. I feel obligated to say that our adult child might even be the coercive partner. And that's a whole different topic and different series of podcasts. If you're listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's my son or that's my daughter, then I would urge you to do some research, sign up for a call so we can maybe talk about it privately. That's a very different situation. The rules still apply. I would not confront the partner or your adult child. I wouldn't make any accusations. I would keep communication gentle, open, consistent. I'd avoid blame. I would not apply pressure because, again, your adult child could totally cut off communication with you. If they feel like they're about to be outed, they could very easily simply walk away. Again, that's just the flip side of what we have been talking about in this episode, but I felt like I needed to point that out. Another thing is to educate yourself. Learn more about coercive control. Again, we are just scratching the surface. Don't panic. Again, the thing about coercive control is that it doesn't necessarily include physical control. Very complex, and change in that environment is very slow. On average, the research tells us it takes a person 7 to 14 attempts to lose a coercively controlling partner or a coercive relationship. That's a lot of attempts. I know of a situation where on the last final and successful attempt, the person had to save up money in a can, basically, taking it out of the household accounts quietly and secretively, packing suitcases so that when that person left, they left clean, could take the kids, put them in the car, and start driving because they knew first they were going to be in big trouble, right? There was going to be an explosion, emotional explosion. And the other thing is the coercive partner is very persuasive. So this person also recognized how vulnerable they were to being persuaded and sort of lulled into coming back. It's like Medusa and the siren call, come back, come back. Before we say goodbye, I want to share a couple of names with you of what I would suggest are key experts in the area of coercive control. These are people that I have studied with or am in contact with that I know to be reliable, and they base their information on research. They're not just pulling it out of their head. This is information that is valid and reliably confirmed. So the first is Dr. Evan Stark, S-T-A-R-K, Evan Stark. His key work is Coercive Control, the Estrangement of Women in Personal Life. It was published in 2007, so it's a little outdated, but it's a good basic place to get started. Another is Dr. Emma Katz, K-A-T-Z, E-M-M-A-K-A-T-Z. Her prominent work is Coercive Control in Children's and Mothers' Lives, 2022. What I like about Emma is that she has a Substack that you can join. I think it's $4 a month or $5 a month. And Emma will respond. If you write to her, if you're in her group and you write to her, she will respond almost immediately. I about fell off my chair the first time I wrote to her. She responded like she was waiting at the keyboard for me. It's been like that every time I've called her. So she's very, very current. Another one of her more recent articles is titled When Family Contact is a Weapon, Coercive Control and Custody. And in my case, that's what we were talking about, was how custody was going to be determined in the courts. Because like we say, coercive control is not recognized, most frequently not recognized in family court. Custody, not recognized. If you don't have a bruise or you didn't report it to child protection, the judge is not likely to listen to it in most states. I hope if you're listening that you're in a state that that's not true. We're making strides, but we're not there yet. Dr. Evan Stark and Dr. Emma Katz, K-A-T-Z. Those are the two I'm going to leave you with today. Again, you're always welcome to schedule with me. I'd be happy to talk with you more about this. It is sadly an experience and an aspect of estrangement that I am very experienced in, both from my studies and in my life, in my own experience. So I certainly understand the dilemmas and more than happy to talk to you. So thanks so much for listening, and watch for another one of those layers of this onion to peel back.